Briarwood Hills was the kind of neighborhood where gates were taller than most homes, and silence was bought with property taxes. It was old money, guarded legacy, and unspoken rules. No one questioned the way things were. And certainly no one questioned the man at the top of the hill, Grant Whitmore, billionaire CEO of Whitmore and Lane, one of the most powerful real estate development firms in the country. He lived alone in a 30,000-square-foot mansion that sat like a crown above the city. Marble floors. Chandeliers imported from Florence. Walls of glass that looked down on the rest of Atlanta as though it were all his. And every morning, precisely at 6:45, Rosa May Henderson stepped off the Route 7 bus, passed the guardhouse with a nod, and walked up the long stone driveway with her lunch in a paper bag. Rosa was in her early 50s, broad-shouldered, quiet, skin deep as polished chestnut, hands strong from decades of scrubbing floors that didn't belong to her. For 6 years, she had worked at the Whitmore estate as the live-in maid, cook, laundress, everything in between. She had a room in the servants' wing, not that Grant ever called it that, but that's what it was. She kept to herself, never spoke unless spoken to, knew the rules, wore beige uniforms that matched the curtains, invisible, obedient, replaceable. Until one Tuesday morning. It was the day the police came. Grant had a meeting downtown. Rosa had just finished folding the last of his starched white shirts when she heard the pounding on the front door. She wiped her hands on her apron, walked to the entry, and opened it. 2 officers. White. Tall. Sunglasses still on. "We received a report of a possible break-in," one said, peering over her shoulder. "This is Mr. Whitmore's home," she replied calmly. "And you are?" "His housekeeper." The second officer raised an eyebrow. "Got ID?" She blinked. Stammered. I live here. In the back quarters. Been here 6 years." "That's so?" "Step outside, ma'am." She hesitated, then stepped forward, only for one of them to twist her wrist behind her back and slam her against the stone archway. "Where's the owner?" "Hiding somewhere." Rosa gasped. Neighbors peeked from behind blinds. The gate guard didn't move. She screamed, not in pain, but in something deeper. Humiliation. Fury. A lifetime of swallowing it down. And that's when Grant pulled into the driveway. His Maserati screeched to a halt. He stepped out, yelling. "What the hell is going on?" The officers turned, confused. One loosened his grip. Rosa stumbled forward, hands shaking. "Sir, we received a call." "This is my employee. My housekeeper. Get your damn hands off her." The moment froze. The white billionaire. The black maid. The white officers. No one knew what to do. They mumbled apologies, backed away, and left in awkward silence. But something had cracked open. Grant turned to Rosa. She was still shaking. Face flushed. Eyes glossy but unbroken. He said something no one had ever heard him say before. "Are you all right?" She looked him dead in the eyes. "No, sir. I'm not." Then she walked past him. Straight into the house. And for the first time in 6 years. She didn't ask permission. The rest of the day passed in a kind of suspended hush. Grant canceled his meeting, something his assistant of 12 years said she had never seen him do. He didn't call the police department. He didn't scream at his staff. He didn't even check the market reports or call in to shout at his brokers like he usually did. He just sat in his study. And Rosa? Rosa didn't cry. She mopped the floor like always, cooked his dinner, folded his napkin into a neat triangle. But she didn't say a word, not even when Grant entered the dining room at 7 p.m., expecting a silent nod. Instead, she placed the steak in front of him, turned, and left. "No, sir." "No. Will that be all?" No deference. Just the sound of her steps on the marble. Grant sat alone at that long dining table meant for 20, watching the steam rise from the food, feeling something crawl inside his chest that he couldn't name. He wasn't used to feeling small in his own house. That night, he knocked on the door to the servants' wing. Rosa opened it. No apron. No gloves. Just a simple robe and her natural hair wrapped in a scarf. "May I come in?" he asked, awkwardly. She didn't step aside. "Mr. Whitmore, we both know this ain't a house where men like you step into rooms like mine." Her voice wasn't angry, just honest. Tired. He lowered his eyes. "You're right. I just—" He paused, searching for something true. "I've never seen you like that before." "You've never seen me at all," she replied. That landed hard. He tried again. "I didn't know they'd treat you that way." She gave a bitter chuckle. "That ain't new, Mr. Whitmore. That's just the first time you noticed." There it was. Truth, naked and cold in the hallway. He didn't know what to say. What could he say? She watched him squirm, and for a moment, she almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "You have a good night, sir," she said softly, and shut the door. The next morning, she was gone. Her bed was neatly made, uniform folded. The room was spotless. And on the pillow, a handwritten note. "I cleaned your messes for 6 years. But some things can't be wiped up with bleach. I need to be somewhere I can breathe. Rosa." Grant stood in that tiny room, staring at the note. It wasn't guilt that hit him first. It was confusion, discomfort. Not because she was gone, but because suddenly the house felt wrong. Too quiet, too hollow. He walked back into the main hall, opened the door to his massive office, and stared out the window. He built an empire, owned half the skyline. But he never really saw the woman who dusted his awards. He went to the gatehouse that afternoon. "I want the security footage from yesterday morning." The guard handed it over without a word. Back in his office, Grant watched it in silence. Rosa opening the door. The cop shoving her. The way she stood, trembling but proud. How she looked at him, not as an employer or a billionaire, but as a man too late to matter. He rewound it again, and again, and somewhere between the fourth and fifth replay, he said it out loud. "I don't even know her middle name." For the first time in his career, Grant Whitmore didn't feel like the man in charge. He felt like the fool in the penthouse. 3 days passed. No sign of her. Grant Whitmore hadn't set foot in his corporate office since Rosa walked out. He canceled meetings, ignored board calls, and let merger deals sit idle on his desk. That had never happened, not in the 23 years since he took over Whitmore and Lane. His assistants whispered behind his back. "He looks shaken." Over a maid? But it wasn't just Rosa's absence. It was the silence she left behind. Grant found himself hesitating before entering rooms. The towels didn't smell like lavender anymore. His shirts weren't folded into perfect squares. The coffee tasted flat. The house was clean, but not right. He called around casually at first. Check with the domestic staff agency. See if Rosa took another placement. She hadn't. He called the bus company, asked for footage from Route 7. They said it would take a subpoena. He even sent his driver through South Atlanta, offering cash at corner stores, gas stations, and churches. "You seen this woman? Her name's Rosa Henderson." Most people shrugged. Some stared suspiciously at the photo. It hit him then hard that this was her life. Invisible. Ignored. Untracked. She wasn't in any VIP club, didn't have a social media trail, didn't attend fundraisers. There were no breadcrumbs to follow. She just disappeared. Finally, a break. His driver, Thomas, a black man in his late 50s, soft-spoken and sharper than he looked, returned one evening with news. "Sir, I asked around off Holloway Street. A woman fitting her description's been volunteering at a shelter down there. Westmore House. She's working." Grant asked, surprised. Thomas gave a small smile. "She's serving. There's a difference." Grant didn't respond. Just nodded, quietly stunned. The next morning, he told no one where he was going. No suits. No Maserati. He wore jeans, stiff, clearly new, and a navy jacket. His watch alone could buy the shelter he walked into. Westmore House was cramped. Old brick walls. Faded signs. The smell of overcooked soup and antiseptic. He stepped inside, eyes scanning for her, and froze. There she was, wearing a white apron, braiding a little girl's hair while waiting for the rice to finish cooking, laughing gently. He hadn't seen her laugh in 6 years. She noticed him instantly. The smile fell. The room held its breath. Rosa stood up. Calm. Poised. "Mr. Whitmore." Not sir. Not Grant. Not anything personal. Just distant. "Rosa," he started, hands stuffed in his pockets. I've been looking for you." She tilted her head. "Why?" "Because I owe you an apology." "You already gave that." With your silence. The words landed like a slap. He took a slow breath. "I didn't know what to say." "You still don't?" He nodded. "You're right." A child tugged on her apron. She smiled down, handed the girl a cookie, and turned back to him. "Is there something you need, Mr. Whitmore?" The formality stung, but he pressed on. "Just 5 minutes." "Outside." She hesitated, then nodded once. They stepped into the sun. He stared at the cracked sidewalk, as if it held the right words. "I realized something," he began. "That morning, when I saw them grabbing you, I wasn't angry because it was you. I was angry because it made me look helpless." Rosa didn't speak. "And after you left, I started realizing I never really saw you. Not once. I knew how you liked the towels folded. I knew your handwriting on the shopping lists. But I never knew where you were from, or what made you smile, or what broke your heart. She folded her arms. Why now? Because I think I need to know. She raised her eyes to him finally. It's not about what you need anymore, Mr. Whitmore. It's about what you're willing to give up to see people like me. He blinked. What does that mean? It means, she stepped closer, her voice low, that until you understand that comfort has a cost, and you've only ever paid with other people's pain, then no apology will ever be enough. He stood there, stunned. She turned back toward the shelter. But before she walked inside, she added softly, You found me. That's a start. Now let's see if you can find yourself. The drive back to Briarwood Hills was silent. No music. No calls. No small talk with Thomas. Grant sat in the back seat of his car like a ghost, hands clasped, eyes unfocused. His usual sharp posture was gone. For the first time in a long time, he slouched. Rosa's words echoed louder than anything he'd heard in a boardroom. You've only ever paid with other people's pain. He didn't understand it fully, not yet, but it rattled him. It made him feel exposed. Not like a man being accused, but like one being shown a mirror he never asked to see. He walked into his mansion that evening and didn't go to his office. Didn't go to the bar for his usual glass of scotch. He walked straight to the laundry room. The washer door was slightly ajar. Inside were the clothes Rosa had left behind, uniforms she hadn't packed, perhaps on purpose. Faded beige, like wallpaper in an old motel. He pulled one shirt out. It smelled like lavender and lemon. He sat down on the bench beside the dryer and just stared at it. A billionaire holding a Maid's shirt like it was a sacred relic. He had never felt purr. The next morning, Grant did something his staff never expected. He showed up to the weekly board meeting late. No custom suit. No tie. And when the CFO started his quarterly report, Grant held up a hand. Not today. Excuse me? The man blinked. Not today. Murmurs swept the room. But Grant stood. We're taking a break from growth projections. From expansion charts. From devouring smaller companies because we can. Today we're going to talk about the people who scrub our floors, cook our meals, and get ignored in every corner of this empire. Dead silence. One executive chuckled nervously. Is this a diversity initiative pitch? Grant looked at him like he'd slapped a priest. It's a reckoning. That evening, back at the mansion, he sat at his desk and opened his personal email. He began typing. Subject, Rosa. Rosa. I don't deserve your time, but I need to ask anyway. Would you meet with me again? Not in that house. Not in the office. Just two people. Wherever you choose. I'll bring nothing but my ears. Grant. He stared at the cursor blinking, then clicked send. Rosa didn't reply that night, or the next. But 3 days later, he got a text message from an unknown number. Friday, 3 p.m. Booker T. Park. Come alone. That was all. Friday came like a storm. The forecast said sunny, but Grant had never felt heavier. He wore plain slacks. No watch. No assistant. No driver. Just him. And nerves. He arrived at Booker T. Park 15 minutes early. It was a small park on the city's south side, the kind of place his kind never entered unless it was for a campaign photo op or a charity speech. He sat on a bench by the playground. Kids laughed. Teens played basketball in the distance. The air smelled like grilled corn and hot dogs from a corner stand. At 3:06, she arrived, wearing jeans, sneakers, and a blue headscarf. Her face was unreadable. She didn't sit right away. You really came. I said I would. People like you say a lot of things. She sat down, leaving a few inches between them. What is this about, Grant? He looked at her then, really looked. Not as staff, not as a symbol of guilt, but as someone whose dignity had been ignored too long. I don't know where to begin. Then don't. Just listen. So he did. She talked. Not just about the police, but about the house. About the dinners served with no, thank you. The 16-hour days. The times she found personal mail opened on the floor. The way his guests looked through her like glass. The holiday bonuses handed out without eye contact. You think racism looks like a cop pulling a gun, she said. But sometimes it looks like never being remembered. Never being seen. He swallowed. I saw you. You saw the work. You never saw the woman. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It was steady. Worn. Truthful. I'm not here to ruin you, she added. I'm not bitter. I just needed to know if you could ever sit beside someone like me and not feel taller. Grant looked at her. I'm trying. She nodded. Then try harder. She stood. That's all I needed to say. He rose, instinctively reaching for his wallet. Can I? She gave a sharp look. If you try to pay me for this conversation, I'll walk straight into the press. He froze. Then ashamed, he nodded. She walked away, but not before turning back. Next time we talk, maybe you'll show up as something better than just sorry. And then she was gone again. But this time, she'd left the door half open. The next morning, Grant stared at himself in the bathroom mirror, toothbrush dangling from one corner of his mouth, eyes blank. It wasn't just another sleepless night. It was a reckoning. He'd spent most of his life convinced he was a good man, a fair man. He gave to charities, spoke politely, hired diversity consultants. He even funded scholarships at 2 HBCUs. But what Rosa said had wedged itself deep in his chest. You saw the work. You never saw the woman. That was it, wasn't it? He'd spent years living inside a glass tower, looking down on the world, mistaking generosity for justice and tolerance for understanding. He had never truly seen her. Not Rosa, not Thomas, not the gardeners, not the cooks, not the janitors in his skyscrapers. They were scenery, background noise to his climb. And now that truth tasted like ash. He skipped the office that day. Again. Instead, he drove to West Atlanta, parked in front of a small brick building he hadn't visited since his father's funeral, a community library his father once donated to in name only. Inside, there were children, black and brown and curious-eyed, volunteers reading to them, an old woman at the front desk who squinted when she saw him. You lost, sugar? He smiled softly. Looking for history. History or redemption? He chuckled, touched his chest like it hurt. Maybe both. In the dusty corner shelves, he found books about civil rights leaders he never learned about in school. Bayard Rustin, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ida B. Wells. He sat there for hours, reading, listening, not to his own voice, but to stories he'd never made space for. That night, he called Thomas. What time do you get off tomorrow? 5:30. Why? I want to take you to dinner. There was a long pause. Everything all right, sir? No, but I think it might be, eventually. They met at a soul food restaurant off Edgewood. No paparazzi, no press. Grant wore jeans again, still stiff. Thomas wore a clean polo and a cautious smile. They sat in the back. I wanted to ask you something, Grant said. Go ahead. Why didn't you say anything? About Rosa. About the way things were in the house. Thomas stirred his iced tea. Because white folks only listen when it affects them. You ain't unique, sir. You're just late. I want to be better. Then don't talk about it. Be it? Grant nodded. Slowly. Will you help me? Not my job to teach you. But I'll walk beside you if you're willing to get your shoes dirty. That hit hard. Deal. They clinked glasses. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't friendship. But it was a beginning. The next week, Grant did something no billionaire in Briarwood Hills had ever done. He invited every domestic worker, landscaper, cleaner, driver, and assistant from his mansion, not for a performance review, not for a check, but for a conversation. He brought chairs into the garden, served the food himself. No suits, no cameras, no speeches. He listened. One by one, they told stories. Of being called by the wrong names. Of being asked to enter through the back door. Of tips that came with fake smiles. Of parties where no one said thank you. He didn't defend himself. He didn't interrupt. He just sat in it. At the end, he stood, hands shaking slightly. I don't expect you to forgive me. Or even believe me. But this house, it's not going to be run on silence anymore. I want to rebuild something here. With you. Not above you. Some nodded. Some looked away. A few smiled. They weren't used to hearing the truth from a man like him. He wasn't used to saying it. That night, he sent Rosa another email. Subject, your seat is still here. Rosa, I understand why you left. But if you ever decide to return, not as a maid, but as a partner in rebuilding, I'll be here. And if not, know this, you changed me. You saved me, not from ruin, but from blindness. Grant, he had sinned. This time, he didn't expect an answer. He just hoped the silence felt different. Rosa read the email 3 times. She didn't reply. Not because she didn't feel something, but because she felt too much. It had been nearly a month since she left Briarwood Hills, and in that time, her life had changed. Not in comfort, but in clarity. At Westmore House, she was no longer invisible. The women there, young, old, worn thin by life, saw her. They listened to her stories. They asked for her recipes. Some even called her Miss Rosa, with a respect she hadn't heard in years. She felt human again. But at night, when the shelter went quiet and the city murmured in its sleep, Rosa sometimes sat on her cot with her hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing. And sometimes, more than she'd admit, she thought about the house on the hill. Not the walls or the chandeliers or the marble, but the silence. And the man who used to live inside it like a king. The next afternoon, she took the long route home from the market. Her feet carried her, not her will, and she didn't realize where she was headed until she looked up and saw it. The gates. Tall, black, iron. Grant Whitmore's house. She hadn't meant to come. Truly. But something inside her needed to see it again. Not to walk in. Not to forgive. Just to look. She stood outside, half hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat, watching from across the street. And then she saw something that made her blink twice. In the garden, chairs. A long table. Not the white-clothed, champagne kind. Plastic ones. Folding chairs. With people sitting around eating. Laughing. Workers. Groundskeepers. His driver, Thomas. And in the middle, Grant. Wearing an apron. Passing plates. Laughing awkwardly as someone handed him hot sauce. She felt her heart jump. She didn't know whether to feel angry, proud, or afraid it was all just a show. But what stopped her cold was what she didn't see. There was an empty seat, right in the middle, with a folded cloth napkin sitting on it. A seat clearly left for someone. Her. She turned and walked away. But that night, she didn't sleep. The next day, she didn't cook at the shelter. By sunset, she had showered, dressed in clean jeans and a pressed white shirt, and stood in front of the mirror staring at her own eyes. And then she called Thomas. Tell him I'll come. 1 hour. Alone. This once. An hour later, the knock echoed through the front door. Grant opened it himself. He didn't speak right away. Neither did she. I left the door unlocked, he finally said. Didn't want to risk you knocking and leaving. She raised an eyebrow. You think I'm here for forgiveness? I think you're here to be heard. He stepped aside. She walked in. The air smelled different. Fresh. Like something new. He didn't lead her to the dining room. He led her to the kitchen, where 2 cups of tea were already steeping. Why here? She asked. Because it's the room I never let you rest in. Figured we could start rewriting it here. She gave a slow nod. Saturday. So talk. I don't want to hawk at you, he said. I want to ask something. She waited. Would you help me? Not as staff. Not as a favor. But as someone who knows more about this house than I ever did. Rosa tilted her head. You want to hire me? I want to partner with you. That landed hard. Doing what? Building something. A foundation. Scholarships. Support programs for domestic workers. Healthcare. Legal protections. Things I should have thought of years ago. And why me? Because you saw what I couldn't. And because I want to earn the right to stand beside you, not above you. A long silence. What's it called? I haven't named it yet. Then let me. She reached into her purse, pulled out a worn notepad, ripped out a page, wrote something, slid it across the table. He looked down. The silent seat. To remind people that silence isn't empty, she said. It's ignored. Grant looked at the name. And for the first time in a very long time, he cried. The foundation launched quietly. No press release. No gala. No photo op with politicians. Just a simple website. A mission statement. And a name. The Silent Seat. The logo was minimalist, an empty chair under a single light. Rosa's idea. Not a throne, she had said. Just a place someone was supposed to be. At first, no one paid attention. Just another charity from another rich man. But within 2 weeks, something shifted. A clip went viral. A low-resolution video taken by a shelter volunteer during Rosa's speech at the Westmore House Community Night. She didn't know she was being filmed. She stood in front of a group of women in folding chairs, all with tired eyes and calloused hands, and said, We clean their homes, but they never ask where we sleep. We raise their children, but they don't know ours by name. And we call it work, but really, we're holding up their world. Her voice didn't crack. It was too strong for that. And yet, it moved thousands. By the next morning, donations flooded in. More importantly, stories did. Maids, drivers, gardeners, nannies, housekeepers. Men and women from Mississippi to Massachusetts sent in voice notes, emails, letters. Some were angry. Some were weary. All of them were true. I cooked for a family for 14 years. They never knew my birthday. They told me to enter through the garage even on Christmas. When the husband got arrested for fraud, I was the one who picked up their child from school and still got laid off the next day. Rosa read every single one. So did Grant. He insisted. He made changes at Whitmore and Lane, too. A formal seat on the board for a representative of support staff. A paid day off every quarter for domestic workers across their properties. Mandatory cultural sensitivity training that he attended, first one in, last one out. Some of his investors complained. He let them go. I'd rather rebuild with new bricks than keep painting over cracks, he told the board. His company's stock dropped 3% that month. He didn't care. Rosa didn't return to the mansion. Not to clean. Not to cook. But she visited often, through the front door. She met with Grant weekly in the study. No aprons. Just shared notebooks, community schedules, and policy drafts. She even brought her granddaughter once, 9 years old, fierce and curious. Is this the house you used to clean? The little girl asked. Rosa smiled. No, baby. This is the house I helped change. Months passed. Then something neither of them expected happened. The New York Times reached out. They wanted to do a feature, The Billionaire and the Maid Who Rewrote the Rules. Rosa refused. Immediately. I didn't do this for applause. But Grant surprised her. Then tell your story so no one else can twist it. She paused. Then agreed. The article dropped on a Sunday morning. The cover photo wasn't a posed portrait. It was a candid shot, Rosa speaking to a room full of workers, arms open, eyes alive. Grant was in the corner, sitting quietly, listening. The piece was long, and it stung. It called out systemic bias. Named names. Quoted Rosa saying things most CEOs would never survive. But Grant didn't flinch. If it hurts to read, imagine how it feels to live. That quote alone became a headline on its own. The foundation's funding tripled in 10 days. And yet, Rosa stayed Rosa. She still walked to meetings. Still carried her notepad in her purse. Still refused to let anyone call her a hero. I'm just a woman who stopped whispering, she said. That seat was always mine. I just stopped waiting to be invited. Success invites applause, but it also invites teeth. Within a month of the New York Times article, whispers turned into roars behind closed doors. Grant Whitmore began receiving calls that didn't come with pleasantries. A senator hinted that his new initiatives were alienating traditional allies. A major investor from Dubai abruptly pulled out of a $200 million project, citing corporate instability. A glossy business magazine published a hit piece. When CEOs get woke, has Grant Whitmore lost touch with his empire? Grant read it during a quiet lunch at his desk. He didn't flinch. He didn't slam anything. He simply clipped the article, highlighted a line that read, Whitmore has allowed a former housemaid to influence executive policy decisions, and mailed it to Rosa, with a sticky note. They finally noticed. Rosa didn't laugh when she read it. She stared at the line for a long time, fingers curling around the edges of the paper. She knew this would happen. There's always a cost when a black woman stands up in a room she wasn't invited into. And yet, she'd underestimated how quickly power tried to strike back. That week, the threats began. Not obvious ones. Not bricks through windows. They came in the form of whispers, silence, and erasure. One shelter director pulled out of a partnership, citing pressure from board members. A cleaning services union Rosa was helping organize suddenly went dark. No emails returned, no calls answered. And then, an envelope arrived at her apartment. No return address. Inside, a photo of Rosa and her granddaughter, walking out of Westmore House. On the back, written in ink. Sit down, or we'll find someone else who will. Rosa didn't scream. Didn't tell the child. She sat at the table that night and stared at the photo for hours, remembering all the women before her who'd been silenced without a threat, just by exhaustion. But she was not them. Not anymore. She took the photo straight to Grant, handed it to him in silence. He looked at it. His eyes darkened. You think this is about me? She asked. They're not scared of you. They're scared of the idea that a woman like me can't be erased anymore. Grant nodded. Then we don't let them. They don't want attention, Grant. They want fear. He looked up. Then let's give them light instead. Within 24 hours, Rosa gave her first live televised interview. No filter. No script. No PR. Just Rosa. Sitting in a small studio across from a black female journalist who wasn't afraid to let the silence breathe. Rosa spoke slowly. Clearly. Like thunder wrapped in velvet. When the photo came in the mail, she said, holding it up, I realized something. They still think fear works. They still think we're too grateful to stand tall. But I didn't clean houses for 30 years just to raise another generation of invisible women. The clip aired nationwide. Within a week, Rosa was on every major outlet. But the attention didn't swell her. It focused her. She didn't talk about the foundation anymore. She talked about the women behind it. She named them. Let's talk about Marlene, who cleaned office bathrooms for 22 years and was laid off without severance. Let's talk about Jenny, whose employer told her she didn't fit the image of the house anymore after her son got arrested. She used her voice like a scalpel, precise, cutting through the noise. And the public began to turn. Suddenly, the silent seat wasn't just a foundation. It was a movement. But not everyone was clapping. Inside corporate boardrooms and political offices, things were shifting. Someone asked a quiet question in a meeting. How long until Grant Whitmore becomes a liability? Someone else nodded. We made him. We can unmake him. That night, Grant received an anonymous tip from a contact in D.C. They're coming for you next. Watch your board. Watch your partners. Something's in motion. He turned to Rosa. They want to burn the house down. Rosa didn't blink. Then we better be the ones holding the matches. The board meeting was set for Tuesday. Location: Whitmore Tower, 47th floor. Agenda: strategic direction and stakeholder confidence. Translation: a coup in tailored suits. Grant knew it walking in. The room smelled like cologne, wealth, and old ambition. He recognized the tone in their voices before anyone said a word. They didn't stand when he entered. That was new. Harold Wexler, the oldest, whitest, richest man on the board, cleared his throat. We're concerned about the direction you've taken, Grant. The brand is shifting. We're in real estate, not revolution, added another, smug in his $9,000 jacket. Grant leaned forward. We're in people, and people are watching. Every day. You think this is a PR nightmare? Just wait until they find out how many NDAs this company paid to silence women like Rosa. Gasps. A few exchanged glances. He wasn't bluffing. Outside that glass fortress, Rosa stood with her arms crossed, waiting. She wasn't invited to the boardroom, so she brought her own room. A press conference. Right there in front of Whitmore Tower. Dozens of domestic workers, activists, journalists, and even students lined the sidewalk. Rosa stepped up to the mic. They tried to erase us quietly. Now we speak loudly. I was told my seat didn't exist, so I built one. And it's made of every story they tried to bury. Flashbulbs. Reporters. Live streams. But her voice didn't shake. If they fire him, they won't just lose a CEO. They'll prove what we've known all along: this system doesn't want change. It wants silence. A cheer erupted behind her. Back upstairs, Harold Wexler grew red. She's outside right now? With cameras. Grant smiled. And she's not leaving. We can't govern this company based on one woman's trauma. Someone barked. Grant stood. No. But we can answer for the trauma we've caused. He reached into his leather folder and dropped something onto the glass table. A signed statement of intent, verified legal proof of past employment abuse cases the board had quietly buried. Names. Amounts. Even signatures. Gasps again. This time, a few in fear. I wanted to believe we were better. But I've read every file. He turned to Harold. If you want to vote me out, go ahead. But if I walk, I'll walk with this in my hand. And every newsroom in the country will follow. Silence. The vote never happened. By 4 p.m., board members resigned. 2 more asked to speak with Rosa. And Harold? He walked out, but not before muttering. You're not the man your father was, Grant replied. Thank God for that. That evening, Rosa met him at the base of the tower. The press had gone home. The crowd had thinned. He stood beside her. No driver. No jacket. Just Grant, tired but unshaken. They'll try again, she said quietly. Let them. He turned to her. You saved me again. She shook her head. I didn't save you, Grant. I just handed you the match. You chose to light it. They sat on a bench nearby as the sun dipped low. 2 people who once lived in the same house but in different worlds, now sitting on the same level. So what now? He asked. Rosa smiled. Now, we make sure no one ever sits alone again. The next morning, the Silent Seat launched its national campaign. Billboards across 5 cities. One message. She wasn't invited to the table, so she built her own. And below it, in white font. The Silent Seat Foundation, founded by Rosa M. Henderson and Grant Whitmore. Back in Briarwood Hills, the mansion was still there. But the house had changed. The staff now entered through the front door. Every dining table had name cards for every seat. And the seat at the head? Sometimes, Rosa took it. Not to reclaim power, but to remind them all. The table was never complete without her. 6 months passed. The silent seat was no longer just a foundation. It was a movement. It started with emails, then phone calls, then town halls across cities. People came with tears and silence, leaving with names and purpose. From Birmingham to Baltimore, women stepped onto small stages with trembling voices and shaking hands, maids, nannies, cooks, elder care workers, telling stories that had lived too long in the dark. One by one, they lit candles Rosa had passed to them, not literal wax, but words, truth, and boldness. And every story started the same way. I never thought anyone would listen. Meanwhile, Grant had taken a step back from headlines. He'd stayed on as CEO, but made Rosa co-chair of the foundation board. He declined Vanity Fair profiles, said no to a speaking slot at Davos, because this wasn't about him anymore. But Rosa, her light was rising. Then came the call that would test everything. A well-known senator, one who had subtly blocked 3 domestic workers' rights bills over the last decade, announced a new initiative, the Domestic Dignity Act. He requested Rosa to stand beside him during the press release. It was a trap. She knew it instantly. The same man who once lobbied against minimum wage for housekeepers now wanted her face next to his on camera. The offers piled in after that. Book deals, documentary pitches, a Netflix biopic. She said no to most, not out of pride, but out of protection. When you become a symbol, she told Grant, they stop seeing you as a person. They can't kill a movement, but they can kill the woman behind it. But one invitation caught her attention. The White House. Not a photo op, not a medal. An invitation to speak before Congress. About a new bill, the Domestic Workers' Bill of Rights. It was everything they'd worked toward, but also everything Rosa had feared. That stage doesn't want women like me, she said. Then that's exactly why you need to be on it, Grant replied. The night before the speech, she stayed in a modest hotel room in D.C. No staff, no entourage, just her speech, and a Bible her mother gave her long ago, pages worn at Psalm 46. She wasn't scared of the cameras. She was scared of them, the polished men in tailored suits who would hear her voice and still not listen. The men who'd call her brave in public and to help in private. But she wasn't going for them. She was going for Zuri, her granddaughter, and for the women who never got the mic. The morning of the hearing, she walked through the white columns with her head held high. No heels, just comfortable shoes. She passed security, journalists, and marble statues of men who'd never cleaned a plate or scrubbed a floor. She entered the hearing room. Packed. Cameras on. Faces watching. When they called her name, she stood. She didn't shake. She didn't smile. She began. My name is Rosa May Henderson. I cleaned houses for 30 years. I've raised other people's children, comforted their elders, and cooked their food while my own went without. I was invisible. Until I wasn't. And now, I speak not just for myself. I speak for the 2.5 million domestic workers in this country, 91% of whom are women, 54% of whom are Black, Latina, or Asian, and nearly all of whom have been told to stay silent. A congressman shifted in his seat. We don't want pity. We want policy. The room stilled. And we're not asking for a seat at your table anymore. We're building our own. Silence. Then applause. From some. From many. From enough. Outside, reporters swarmed. She kept walking. She turned off her phone that night, slept with a full breath, and in the morning, the bill advanced. Not passed, yet, but advanced. And for the first time in her life, Rosa didn't feel like she had to whisper thanks for progress. She demanded more, because she knew something now. They can't shut down what's already spoken out loud. 2 months later, Rosa returned to Atlanta. No parades, no crowds, no cameras. Just the same neighborhood bus routes, the same cracked sidewalks she used to walk every morning at dawn. But now, people stopped her. A teenager on a bike nodded and said, "You're the lady from C-SPAN, right?" An older woman whispered, "You spoke for all of us, baby, even the ones too tired to speak." At the corner store, the cashier gave her coffee on the house. Not because she was famous, because she was familiar. The kind of truth that lives in people's bones. Back at Westmore House, the shelter had changed too. There were now workshops every Wednesday on tenant rights, wage protections, and navigating health benefits. Not taught by lawyers. Taught by Rosa and women like her, who lived the life and survived it. There was a mural now too, painted by a local art student. It showed Rosa in a kitchen, arms outstretched, surrounded by nameless women made of shadows and light. Above them, in bold letters, we were never voiceless, just unheard. Rosa cried when she saw it. She didn't go back to Briarwood Hills much. The mansion still stood, but it no longer belonged to the version of her that had scrubbed marble and folded linens in silence. Still, once a month, she met Grant for tea at a small cafe on Auburn Avenue. They never talked about stock prices or real estate. Only people, only progress, only how far they still had to go. That month, Grant brought a surprise. A folded letter. Old paper. Yellowing. Rosa opened it slowly. What is this? Something I found when going through my mother's things. She unfolded it, and her heart stopped. It was a letter from her own mother, written to Grant's mother, decades ago. She read aloud. Dear Mrs. Whitmore, thank you for allowing me to stay those few nights while cleaning for the estate. I know I wasn't supposed to use the guest room, but my daughter was sick, and I couldn't leave her home alone. Please forgive the breach. Rosa's throat tightened. I didn't know your mother worked for mine, Grant said quietly. Rosa held the letter like a thread connecting generations of silence. They both knew the rules, she whispered, and both knew how to break them, just enough to survive. She framed that letter, hung it in her apartment above the kitchen table. So every time she sat down, she remembered. Her voice wasn't the beginning. It was an echo of all the women who came before. Later that fall, Rosa was invited to speak at Spelman College. It wasn't a national headline. Just a quiet evening in a university hall filled with young black women, smart, driven, radiant. Rosa didn't bring notes. She didn't bring applause lines. She just told the truth. You will walk into rooms where they'll question why you're there. Sit anyway. You will be told your silence is grace, your endurance is virtue. Speak anyway. And when they try to erase your story, remind them you were never written in pencil. Thunderous applause. But she didn't smile for it. She smiled for what she saw. Dozens of eyes lit not by admiration, but recognition. That night, one girl stopped her in the hallway. Tall, braids, strong stance. Miss Rosa, I want to do what you did. Start something. Make change. Rosa looked at her gently. Then don't do what I did. The girl blinked, confused. Rosa leaned closer. Do it faster. And don't wait till your hands are tired. Start now. Back home. Rosa lit a candle. For the women who couldn't make it that far. And for the girls just getting started. The flame flickered gently. But it didn't go out. Not this time. Not ever again. It came on a Thursday. A letter. Real paper. No return address. Neat cursive, unfamiliar, yet practiced. Rosa almost tossed it, assuming another press request or event invite. But something stopped her. She opened it slowly. Her hands trembled by the second sentence. My name is Clarissa May Henderson. I believe I am your daughter. She froze. No breath. No thought. Just stillness. A name she hadn't said aloud in 28 years. The past rushed in like a wave. Clarissa. The baby she gave birth to at 17. The one her mother made her give to the church-run adoption agency. You don't have the means, Rosa May, her mother had said. You barely eat. How you gonna raise a child? She hadn't even held her for more than 5 minutes. She had buried that ache. Under work. Under silence. Under obedience. And now, it had come back. In cursive. The letter continued. I found your name on a hospital record. Then I saw you on the news. I watched your hearing. I recognized my own eyes. I don't want anything. I just want to know if you still remember me. Rosa clutched the paper. She didn't cry. Not yet. But the stillness of the room felt louder than any grief. That night, she sat across from Grant at their usual cafe. She didn't bring up the silent seat, or politics, or upcoming events. She placed the letter in front of him. He read it quietly. When he looked up, his eyes were wide, unsure. What will you do? Rosa's voice cracked for the first time in months. I don't know how to be her mother. You already are, he said softly. You were the moment you remembered her name. She wrote back the next day. Short, careful, honest. Yes, I remember you. Every day. She waited. 3 days passed. Then another letter came. This time with a photo. A woman in her late 20s. Warm eyes. Braided hair. And next to her, a child. A girl. Her name is Autumn. She's 6. She asked if she could call you Grandma. Rosa's knees buckled. She sat on the floor and wept. For time lost. For names she never got to say. For all the birthdays spent cleaning someone else's silver. The first meeting happened at Booker T. Park. Neutral ground. Clarissa wore a yellow blouse. Nervous smile. Autumn clung to her side, shy. Rosa walked up slowly. Every step felt like years unspooling. "Clarissa," she whispered. "Mama." That single word shattered her. They embraced. No speeches. No explanations. Just the ache of absence being held, finally, in someone's arms. Autumn hid behind her mother's leg. Rosa knelt down. "Hi, baby." The little girl peeked out. "You're the lady from TV." Rosa smiled through tears. "Sometimes. But mostly. I'm just somebody's grandma." Autumn nodded. Then did something Rosa would remember forever. She reached out, held Rosa's hand, and didn't let go. The weeks that followed weren't perfect. There were awkward pauses, quiet dinners, questions too heavy for small talk. But Clarissa came again, and again. They visited Westmore House together, cooked in the shelter kitchen. Autumn ran down the halls like it was hers. One day, Clarissa turned to her. "I saw that mural." "The one with all the women?" "Yeah." She paused. "You made space for everyone, except yourself." Rosa blinked. "I didn't think I deserved to be painted." Clarissa smiled. "Then let me paint you." 2 weeks later, a new panel was added to the mural. Not on the wall, but on Rosa's own living room canvas. It showed Rosa and Clarissa seated together. Autumn between them. 3 generations. One table. And above it, in Clarissa's brushstrokes. "We are the voices that were never erased." That night, Rosa stood in front of the painting alone. The house was quiet, but not the kind of lonely it used to be. This silence was full of breath, of history, of names rediscovered. She lit a candle. For her mother. For the daughter she got back. For the granddaughter who made her feel new again. And whispered, "We're whole now." The invitation arrived in a red envelope, formal, crisp, embossed with a gold seal. Inside, the National Equity Forum, Washington, D.C. Keynote speaker, Rosa May Henderson. Below that, a single line. "You will be representing the voice of domestic workers across the nation." Rosa held the envelope in her lap for a long time. She had spoken in front of Congress, schools, foundations. But this felt different. Representing the voice. One voice. The voice. But whose? She brought the letter to Westmore House that evening and showed it to Gloria, one of the shelter's oldest residents. Gloria, a former hotel maid, read it slowly, then looked up. "That's a heavy coat to wear, baby. You think I should say no?" "I think you gotta ask yourself if you're carrying stories, or standing on them." That landed hard. Rosa didn't answer. Not yet. In the days that followed, the pushback came from within her own circle. "She ain't no PhD. I've been doing this work longer." She got famous off one story. What about the rest of us? Jealousy wasn't the root. Fear was. Fear that one woman being raised up would mean others staying down. Rosa understood it. Felt it in her bones. She called a meeting at the community center. Invited everyone. No microphones. No news cameras. Just folding chairs and heartbeats. She stood at the front. No prepared speech. Just truth. "They asked me to speak as your voice. But I don't own your voice. I only carry it." She looked across the room. Mothers, grandmothers, undocumented workers, trans women, non-English speakers, all cleaning the same homes, unseen in different ways. "If you want me to speak, I will. But if you want to speak with me, we'll build that stage together." The silence was thick. Then Gloria stood. "You ain't the only voice, Rosa. But you're a damn strong one. So say what needs saying and take us with you." Applause followed, not thunderous, but deep. Earned. Rosa went home that night and pulled out her notebook. At the top of the blank page, she wrote, "This is not a speech. It's a translation." And underneath, of rage, of grace, of the women who weren't invited. The forum took place at a grand hotel. Marble floors, velvet curtains, all the trimmings of people who'd never scrubbed either. Rosa stepped onto the stage in a simple navy dress, hair pulled back, silver earrings her mother once left in a dresser drawer. She looked out over a sea of suits and polished silence. She inhaled, then spoke. "I was never meant to stand here. I wasn't groomed for leadership. I wasn't handed a microphone. I found it in a pile of laundry and decided to hold it. You want to talk equity? Let's start with memory. Remember the women who raised your children while theirs went hungry. Remember the hands that set your tables while their own families ate leftovers. Remember, we're not asking for a spotlight. We're building one." A pause. Then she looked directly into the crowd. "And if I make you uncomfortable, it means the truth is working." The room stood. Not politely. Powerfully. Later, during the reception, A young activist approached her. How did you know what to say? Rosa smiled. I didn't. Then how? She looked the girl straight in the eye. I said what we were all too tired to repeat and too powerful to keep hiding. That night, back in her hotel room, Rosa opened her email. Dozens of new messages. But one stood out. Subject: You spoke for my mother, even though she never said a word. No signature. Just a story. About a maid named Celeste, who died in silence and was finally remembered. Rosa closed her laptop, lit the small travel candle she kept, and whispered again, We're still speaking, Celeste. All of us. It came quietly, not through headlines or flashing cameras, just a knock at the door. Rosa opened it to find a woman in her early 40s, sharp suit, sharp smile. She introduced herself as Lena Douglas, senior strategist for a progressive congressional campaign. Only she wasn't there to ask for Rosa's support. She was there to offer her the seat. Ms. Henderson, we've run the numbers. You have name recognition, a national following, deep community trust, and more integrity in your pinky finger than most folks have in their whole caucus. Rosa blinked, arms still crossed. You want me to run for Congress? Yes. George is 5th. The seat's opening up. You'd win, Rosa. You'd change the game. Rosa didn't answer. Not then. She poured herself tea, sat in her favorite chair, watched the sky turn from orange to charcoal through her window. Me? In office? She thought about the countless women who scrubbed walls and bit their tongues, who didn't live long enough to be asked once, let alone elected. She thought of Clarissa, of Autumn, of Zuri, the girl who braided her hair at Westmore House and once whispered, I want to be brave like you. But she also thought of the weight, the politics, the war. Because once you stepped into those chambers, truth had to fight harder to survive. Underscore 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 underscore. She called Grant, told him everything. He didn't say much at first. Then, they'll try to own you, Rosa. I know, but you've always been unknownable. That made her laugh. I'm not built for politics, Grant. No, but you're built for people. And they're the ones who keep getting left behind. She took 3 days. Walked neighborhoods, sat in church basements, talked to shelter workers, single moms, tired men on porch steps. She didn't ask them to vote for her. She asked what they needed. And in their stories, she found the answer. At a Saturday town hall hosted by the Silent Seat, Rosa stood before over 300 people and said, I've never chased power. Power's what stepped on my hands for 30 years while I cleaned up after it. But if y'all are telling me that seat's open, and we finally got the right to sit in it, then I won't run for me. I'll run for us. Thunder erupted. And just like that, Rosa May Henderson was a candidate for Congress. But the headlines came sharp. Housekeeper turned politician. Is America lowering its standards? From mob to mic, populist or pretender? Radical Rosa, another left-wing folk hero? She didn't answer them. Not in press statements. Not in tweets. She answered on doorsteps. In living rooms. In school auditoriums. She talked about wage theft. Housing, healthcare, dignity. And everywhere she went, people leaned in like they'd been waiting years for someone to talk to them, not at them. Her opponent? A fourth-term incumbent with million-dollar donors and a polished smile. He tried to attack her record, called her untested, emotional, divisive. She never returned fire, just told her truth, over and over, until the people heard it so loud, even silence couldn't ignore it. The night before the election, Rosa sat on her porch with Clarissa and Autumn. The little girl climbed into her lap and asked, Grandma, if you win, will you stop coming home? Rosa kissed her forehead. No, baby. If I win, home just gets bigger. She didn't sleep that night. Watched the sky lighten from dark blue to soft gray. And at 6:47 a.m., her phone rang. It was Lena. 3 words. You did it. Rosa cried quietly, then stood, brushed off her coat, and said to no one and everyone, Let's get to work. January 3rd. Swearing-in day. The Capitol was draped in winter sunlight, the dome gleaming as if to say, This is new. Inside, among a sea of suits and pearls and practiced posture, stood Rosa May Henderson. No designer gown. No entourage. She wore a dark blue pantsuit. The same silver earrings from her mother. And a small, folded photograph in her jacket pocket. Her, Clarissa, and Autumn in front of the mural. "So they come in with me," she'd whispered that morning. When her name was called, Rosa stood alone at the center of the house chamber. A hush fell. Even the ones who didn't know her felt her. She placed her hand on the Bible. Not a leather-bound showpiece. Her mother's. Pages creased. Verse underlined. Psalm 46 verse 5. God is within her. She will not fall. The oath echoed. "Do you solemnly swear?" She answered without trembling. "I do." The chamber clapped. Some politely. Some with genuine awe. But Rosa? She didn't bask in it. She carried it. The next day, she arrived early, before staff, before cameras. She walked the marble corridors in quiet. In her hand, a list. It wasn't a to-do. It was a to-say. Stories. Of Gloria, the shelter worker. Of Thomas, the driver. Of Celeste, who died without justice. Of her mother, who never dared to dream this big. Of herself, who once thought folding towels neatly was the most she could offer the world. She walked into her office. Fresh paint. Clean desk. But Rosa didn't sit. She took the chair, the one behind the desk, and pushed it aside. In its place, she brought in a new one. Worn. Wooden. Sturdy. The kind of chair you find in kitchens, not boardrooms. She placed it at the center of the room. And when her staff entered, wide-eyed, she pointed to it. "That's the silent seat. Every decision I make. I'll look at that chair. And I'll ask, what would she say?" In her first week, Rosa co-sponsored 3 bills. The National Domestic Workers Bill of Rights. The Fair Wage Transparency Act. The Emergency Housing Relief for Women-Led Households Act. Some laughed. She's wasting her first term on long shots. But Rosa didn't come to play politics. She came to shake walls. In March, she took the floor for the first time. Not to debate. To deliver a speech. Her voice carried like thunder across the chamber. "When I worked in houses like yours, I learned how to disappear. Now that I stand in a house like this, I plan to be seen. And I didn't come alone. I brought every woman who was ever paid in silence, every story swept under your rugs. This seat may be mine, but the voice? It belongs to millions." Back home, Clarissa watched the live feed holding Autumn in her lap. The little girl looked up. "Grandma's louder than everybody." Clarissa smiled. "She's not loud. She's just never whispering again." And in Briarwood Hills, Grant sat at his desk, staring at a photo framed on his shelf. Rosa, standing on the Capitol steps, not waving. "Rooted. She made it," he whispered, then paused. "No. She made us." On Rosa's 100th day in office, her staff surprised her with a plaque. It didn't quote her campaign. It didn't list achievements. It said only this. She walked into the rooms they said she couldn't. She didn't sit at their table. She made a better one. That night, after the Capitol lights dimmed, Rosa sat in her office alone. She turned toward the wooden chair, lit a candle on the windowsill, and said softly, "We're still here. We're still speaking. And this time, the house is listening."